And we've seen this again and again in populations throughout the world. So what I'm going to ask you to do is notice what we've done here. We've created a circle. This is a far better teaching place and space than the typical teacher here, row, 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 row. I'm going to ask you to consider why that may be. No, seriously, I want you guys to think about it and give me an answer.
Inclusivity. I can see everybody. I can see everybody.
You can see everybody. Inclusivity. Also, there's nobody right behind you. Right? So if you've been traumatized, you've been threatened with violence, you've experienced violence, the last thing that you want is somebody behind you. Right? So be aware of that when you're teaching. Don't walk up behind people. Approach from the side or the front. Let people know that you're approaching. And then be safe. Do not tell your students to close their eyes. In fact, don't tell your students to do anything. Ask them. You guys have maybe perhaps seen that the language that I use is, I will ask you to consider. Perhaps be curious. Do not demand anything upon people that they had everything taken away from them. What we want to do is restore agency. We want to restore the idea of having choice. And the only thing that they have left right now possibly is their body. Let them have choice over their body. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Also, if you're going to be doing adjustments, and we're going to talk about that, first of all, who has to leave early besides you? I know you do.
Just
Jack?
When the first person who rings the buzzer at.
Okay.
Probably around 5:45.
So I'm going to ask you to consider that, so the senses are integral to re-traumatizing somebody, okay? Smell triggers the amygdala. Smell is primal. We know this, right? Like memories, immediate, okay? Please try to be careful with wearing scent, okay? In fact, I would recommend not using scent unless you've carefully brought it in and said, does anybody want to smell this? Is anybody curious perhaps about how you can use scent in your own life to help you, right? Like lavender and things like that, you know? Yeah. When I worked at a residential incarceration site, I brought in lavender. I asked them to consider exploring, to consider smelling it, and then would anybody like some? They fell in love with rosewater. Right? But be careful of what triggers could happen. So be aware of the space that you're creating. Be aware of where you're putting yourself in their space. Be aware of scent. Be aware of right? Harsh lights affect our nervous system. Okay? In this, I don't know what the shelters are, what the rooms are going to be like. I've taught in places where there's with couches and chairs and stuff, and use your imagination. If there are couches and chairs and stuff like that, perfect opportunity to do restorative, right? You're going to be walking into a situation in which you're not going to have a lot of control, is my guess. So you need to go in very grounded. Highly recommend that you get there early, that you have an understanding of the space and of the people that are involved, and that you sit for 5 minutes, if you can, okay? Whenever I travel to East New York or Brownsville, I listen to mantra and dharma on the whole way to prepare my mind. So, sense, touch, space, lighting, adjustments. So, and also we're going to talk about certain yoga poses. Certain yoga poses are a no-no until you get to know your clients, your students, whatever you want to call them, your fellow humans that you're offering skills to, okay? Down dog to people that have quite possibly experienced sexual violence, probably not a good idea. Not at all. Also, you may have people wearing skirts, not uncommon. People wearing pants that are really tight, people that are obese, people that can't really move. So you're going to have to be creative. Standing poses, really effective, okay? So, and we'll talk about, Miriam and I will talk about a certain series of poses that you guys can utilize. But if you've got, and we've all seen this, you've got people wearing super tight pants, the moment they bend over, their ass is hanging out, that's not gonna feel very good for them. Don't put them in that position. Standing poses. You can easily move through, and I do this often, from your Tadasana into utilizing how to go into Warrior Two, right? And reverse. Keep it simple to begin with until you understand their capacity and their ability, okay? And I'll send you a set. I have 10 trauma-informed yoga poses that I've created for a training that I did in Uganda. In regards to adjustments, so seated poses and seated forward folds, quiet your mind. You guys all experience this. You're yoga teachers and yogis, right? So this is really essential to giving ease. So as you've experienced in my classes, right? If I have people in down dog, right? In the classes here, not in other sites that I teach at, I ask them, if you want to be adjusted, raise a finger. That way nobody's looking at them and knowing who wants to be adjusted and who doesn't. And use language that gives them agency. Don't say who doesn't want to be adjusted, who wants to be adjusted, right? Using language, how you're using it is really important. Coming back to choice. These people are in a homeless shelter. They have no choices. Please be aware of that. And we'll talk about certain yoga poses. So forward folds are great. So the way that forward folds, lengthening the exhalations, restorative yoga poses, what they do is they engage the parasympathetic nervous system. When you are in fight, flight, or freeze, which is what happens in people that have experienced PTSD, they're stuck there. Unless they can begin to self-regulate, they're stuck in that hyperarousal or hypoarousal, so, and have anxiety and deep depression. So you want to bring them back into giving them ease. Lengthening the exhalation does that. Forward folds do that. But again, you're not going to have them do Uttanasana because their ass is in the air. Do not make them, do not create an opportunity for them to be vulnerable in that way.
Oh, yeah.
Huge heart openers are a no-no for people that are experiencing anxiety, right? It's too much. Slowly, slowly. Cobra pose, a beautiful pose. Also, cobra pose, what does it do? What it helps to do is to help to move things through the kidneys. If you have adrenal exhaustion, which can happen when you're constantly in fight or flight, it begins to move and soften the kidneys. You can have them hold poses for a nice long time. You can move into child's pose, but we call it wisdom pose. Okay? Especially if they're children, they don't want to be child's pose. Wisdom pose. Recognizing and making sure that every single time you ask people who has any injuries. Be aware, however, that sometimes when people have lots of injuries, whatever, it could be gunshots or stabbings or whatever, they may feel the need and the desire to talk about it a lot. So utilize what we call classroom management. Okay, you may also want to, and Booker does a really great job of this, she's a friend of mine at Lineage. As people would come in, she would greet each one of them and say, is there anything that I need to know about before today's session? Right, that way people don't feel singled out, okay? Let me look at my efficient thing.
Yeah.
Also, when you guys, so there's going to be a children's class, right? It's my understanding that the ages are going to be 7 to 14?
I haven't heard yet.
5 to 17, I think I heard.
Which is a huge age range. You're gonna be working in pairs too, which is great. I'm gonna ask you to consider, or to maybe even remember that when you have adolescents, they're boys and girls, and they're in the same room, it gets a little crazy, because they're peacocking for each other. And consider the possibility of separating.
So have them in separate spaces?
If you can, or just see what happens, see what happens, but what basically all of this is going to require of you guys is to increase your skill set by quite a lot. And so you're gonna have to think on your feet by quite a lot. You may have people that are not able to move, as I mentioned, and then at the same time, you might have some people that are really open to it and flexible, and they, and I've seen it again and again. You've got people that, we know this, that are just natural yogis. So how do you offer, working with this and working with this at the same time when you've only got an hour? That's not very long at all.
Yeah.
Focusing on the breath is essential. Because usually when people have extreme states of anxiety or depression, they become detached. So what you want to do is bring them back to themselves, bring them back to themselves. Yes, please.
With the children classes, I mean, if you have a large range between young and old, should you mix the ages so that they can see each other? Is there some sort of partnering within the kids that would work?
Partner yoga works really well with kids.
Yeah.
Having them do Warrior 3 together, having them do Natarajasana together, partnering works really well. You can also, if you have a kid, and this is probably gonna happen, if you have a kid that's acting out, right? The best way to have them come back to engaging in the class is have them sit right next to you, and then eventually have them help teach the class. Usually what they're doing is they're wanting to be seen, right? So as with all children, it's better to kind of give them the opportunity to be seen in a good and effective and helpful and beneficial light than the other way. The problem is that most of these children that I've experienced, no one has ever expected anything of them. But once you do kind of expect something of them, they will rise to the occasion. It's really beautiful. There's a lot of psychology behind all of this, and it's heartbreaking. And it's necessary that you guys reach out to me and to Miriam and you check in with each other. Because I have definitely left places just with my heart just like, okay? Anybody have any other questions?
What did you say about music?
Oh, sound. Yeah, I'm sorry, that's right, part of the senses. So this is being offered in a secular fashion. Okay, so we're gonna stay away from words like oming until you begin to understand. I use the chimes all the time. That's like instant. In fact, I start a lot of my classes by utilizing the chimes, especially with adolescents, because it brings the focus and it brings ease very quickly. You guys have done that with me, right? All right, so we'll do that. Actually, have you done it with me?
No.
So it's the. I'm like very We'll do it quickly so you have an understanding of it. Also, I'm not really quite sure what props you're going to have, but we'll talk about that. So this is a form of single-pointed concentration. And you can even tell them that because it sounds pretty cool. And it works very well. So, and the other thing that I've found to be quite effective is having them understand the connection with their body and their brain and their mind by asking them to sit as though they were kings or queens. And especially with the children, to perhaps have them consider that dignity is something that no one else gives them, they give it to themselves by how they carry themselves. Right? And then moving from that, so this little exercise is really quite beautiful. You have them, and I'll do it with you guys now, okay? So again, you can do this with your eyes closed, or simply lower the gaze, whatever you're comfortable with. When you no longer hear the sound, just raise it again. And we'll do it 3 times. Okay, and I'm going to do it again this time. See if perhaps if you can follow how the sound moves through your body. Because it'll move differently through your lungs than your bones, your organs. And I'm going to do it one more time. See if perhaps if you can notice the difference between what you hear from your right eardrum and your left. Okay. And then you can ask them to perhaps describe what they felt and how they felt. It's a way for them to begin to understand how they can use sound to quell the monkey mind. Right? Even just for a few moments of calm and peace. Because ideally what we want to do is leave them with skills that they can utilize at any time. Right? Mm-hmm. Not just when you're there, but when they're walking around, and they can bring them and they can notice, right? Part of the practice is having themselves notice what's happening in their bodies and their minds, and then beginning to transform that through recognizing that they have choice. This is huge. Gina, do you have any thoughts or questions?
I mean, I'm interested obviously in the sequence.
We'll get that to you.
And I'll just watch the recording.
Yeah. I'm really glad that you came.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry.
No worries at all. It's really amazing that you came. Another thing to bring your awareness to is the fact that in a lot of these communities, the access to good, healthy food is pretty slim. This is another form of endemic racism. So, Miriam, it might be a really good idea to find out what their diet is. I always ask, especially if I'm working in a residential setting, find out what they're eating, because that'll give you a greater idea of what's going on with them, too. Yeah.
Would that be to the shelter? They would be eating for them?
They get food at night. I'm sure they do. we can get some more specifics on that, but if they're living in the shelter, they're probably fed in the shelter, at least probably 2 meals a day. So try to see what the diet is.
What do you think about twists?
Twist is all gonna depend upon what's happening with their backs.
But it's not gonna, for the parasympathetic. I mean,
You-
because I usually do twist with forward bending.
Yeah, no, you should, and of course you should. So what I do is I start with that, right? And then I move through seated cat and cow and some little twists, right? And then maybe some seated forward folds. It all depends on what's happening right in front of you. If you've got people that are nonstop talking, you can remind them that it's really difficult to connect to your breath if you can't hear your breath because you're talking, right? Or if you have a bunch of ladies that are overweight and it's difficult for them to do certain poses, you might start with doing chair yoga.
Yes.
You know, and we can check in throughout as you're going, you know, so I can give you different stuff to try and to consider. But a lot of it, like I said, is you just have to look around and see what's going on and be like, hey, let's do this, or hey, let's try this, or because it's not like this thing where everybody's sitting here looking at you and like, or it could be, but then again, you just don't really know. So, you know, the idea is to stick to the basics. Be aware of the space, be aware of what you're creating, be aware of your tone, you know, don't be so serious. Seriously, fun is good too, joy. And then as far as like, so for adjustments, I mean, I rarely ever adjust people. Because first I want them to just be comfortable being on a yoga mat without having somebody in their face. If I adjust them, I only adjust them when I see that they're doing something, you know, horrendously wrong so that they don't hurt themselves. I do want to take this moment, since we're here, to kind of talk about adjustments, the way to do them and the way not to do them. So also, please try to remember that most people are not going to be, if you're sitting in, if you have them in a forward fold, right, they're not going to be able to easily do this. They're not. So always offer the variations. I know that we're trained to do that, or we should be trained to do that, but we don't always do that, right? So, and if I'm here, I asked Stephen to possibly get bolsters. I'm not sure if that was the case, but you know, this is a lovely restorative pose. If I'm in this, right, so if I'm here, so Miriam, will you come here and kind of just show like what to do and what not to do as far as adjusting for anybody, regardless of what your student is? Look. So this is like a great, first of all, this is a great pose for people that are having headaches. You can do this with pregnant people too.
What I would not do is press down on her kidneys or liver. What I would do is maybe stabilize her by pressing down on her thighs. And then what I also might do is give her an upward here. So there's a sense of direction. So I'm giving her a sense of where she wants to go. I might just do that. Honestly, if she was in the class here, I would cinch her hips together. So I'm giving her something to move away from. I would never do that at the DHS program.
Yeah.
I would never touch her below her hips.
Let's also talk about,
That's what I'm assuming, right?
yeah, no, if we're in, let's say you do have, let's say you've got like some women who are in their 20s and can do down dog, right? And I mean, you might also get a bunch of young women in their 20s and you put them into down dog and they start twerking, which I've experienced many times. You could be like, okay, once you're done twerking, let's come back to the breath. You know, use comedy, right?
I love that.
What I will ask you to do, so come to down dog, Mary. So, it's working. Right, so please do not come up behind your person. In a yoga class here, right, like this might actually be a really lovely adjustment. Don't do this in a homeless shelter. Okay, you can perhaps come up and say, can I adjust you? And then, notice my hands. I am not gripping anything. I'm not holding on to her. I'm simply pushing. Okay? Right? And then you could, I'm like, I wanted to do that now. You know, so that's one thing that you can be aware of, providing traction in forward folds, but just be really careful of touch. Okay? And then the other thing, so certain yoga poses that I would highly recommend that you offer, standing poses. Triangle pose. Why do you get, thank you.
Yeah.
So when you come into triangle pose, right, of course with awareness on drawing up on the knee, engaging the quad to prevent the knee from doing all the crazy stuff that it wants to do. And, you know, I'm not like one of those people that does this and I simply tick-tock. But one of the reasons that triangle pose is so beneficial for people, why do you think? That's a good one too, yep, you're right about that. You're taking up space, but
The upper face?
no, it's about, okay, so what's happening with my body right now?
You're opening up the chest.
You're grounding and you're twisting and you're extending and expanding.
What organs am I affecting?
Liver,
Kidneys.
belly.
Yep, kidneys. This is a big one, but so don't leave people there too long, right?
So can you talk a little bit about why the kidneys are so integral?
So the kidneys are here, okay? On top of the kidneys are your adrenal glands. Right, so when you're suffering from adrenal exhaustion, right? The kidneys begin to kind of shut down, the adrenal glands get overwhelmed. It's, you know, you'll notice all sorts of different problems happening that are starting to affect the body as a whole. So when I'm doing this pose, I am compressing and opening. Compressing and opening. You're flushing through the organ.
Yes.
Right? That's how yoga works. And then, you know, just have them coming out of things mindfully. Joint alignment. So twist, to get back to your question, Miriam, I would recommend seated twists. So if you're here from your Dandasana after your forward fold, right, in which you'll notice and feel the energy in the room shift, right? So you would have them come up. I always ask my students to reach forward to come up so that the lumbar vertebrae are not compressing. If you have somebody that has obvious back problems, have them help support themselves to come up. But easy seated spinal twist, we all know this one.
It's a TV twist.
Right. And then the variations, you know?
They might not be able to do that.
That's why there's variations. So you would just be right here. Just here. Heart openers. So as I mentioned before, when you have them, let's say you have them in down dog. And this is kind of good with the adolescents. So you have them in down dog and you hold a plank. Because one of the ways is to kind of challenge them, right?
Yeah.
And then you,
Tired.
yeah, you make it tired. And you say to one of the kids, you're like, okay, count to 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. You know, and then just, so this too, with this slight back bend here, I'm compressing and opening the kidneys. So here's a place where a nice adjustment on a forward fold would be good.
Okay.
But again, not just lying on top, please don't lie on top of them. With traction. Ideally, so here, Mary, come be in child's pose, please, wisdom pose.
Why don't we call it child's pose again?
Because when kids don't want to hear that's child's pose.
Okay, for kids especially.
So also, so they're gonna have, I mean, they're still also, for adolescents, they're gonna associate this possibly with sexual activity. So this is what, and also some adults might get triggered.
Yeah.
But usually most adults, I've noticed, really like this pose because it feels really good on the back.
Yeah.
The variation, however, would be for Miriam to widen her knees. Okay, any knee problems, which a lot of people have, unfortunately. So you want to come up behind somebody, pull their shirt down because that makes them feel cared for, and make sure that you're just maybe perhaps reaching the arm forward, and then reaching the arm forward, and just pressing. Okay.
What about, I was thinking, I like a Sphinx pose, because you can support the
Yeah, I
lower
like that
back.
You want to show everyone?
Oh, yeah, I've been doing this a lot in class too, and then I'm like, you know, you have your piano playing fingers and you use them to pull the floor towards you, and then you press the.
Sphinx pose too is great too. Yeah, I mean, in my mind, it's kind of a variation of.
Yeah, okay.
But make sure that the elbows are underneath your knees, your shoulders, draw your elbows in just a little bit more.
Well, I always do them like this. You like it like this? I'm just curious.
Yeah, and then lifting up.
Okay, so it's a deeper.
It's a little bit of a deeper back bend. So just notice what's happening, obviously, with your students, clients.
So what about restorative, like placing, if we have blocks underneath, right underneath this shoulder blades, so it's lifted up, nothing with the.
Okay, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that right now. So be where you were.
Mhm.
You were, go back to Baddha Back to, let's try it here, throw me a block. So, let's say in a yoga class in the city. So why would you perhaps not want to introduce this pose within the first couple of weeks?
Because it's vulnerable.
Anxiety, heart failure.
Right. It may feel great, or it may just re-trigger somebody. So just wait until you know your clients, watch them, see how they are, So the other idea would be perhaps to extend the legs and not be on such a high height.
Right.
Or you can keep your knees bent with your feet flat on the ground.
Yeah. I personally wouldn't do any of these.
Right, okay.
A better restorative posture for in this situation, right? After you have them do their standing poses and then some seated poses, hip openers are good too, but very gently, right? If you have blocks, here. Okay, also by dropping the chin into the sternum, right? So this is a back bend, but it's supported, and the hands are down, and the chin is dropped down, and then from here you could have them slowly roll down, and then maybe draw their knees into their chest, which is cool, right? This is basically child's pose upside down. What you would not want to have them do.
Yeah, that's like
It's not.
happy boyfriend pose, right?
Okay, from here you could do a spinal twist. Hey Jack, could you grab me a chair real quick? One of the folding chairs. But the reason why this pose is so good is also because dropping the chin to the sternum helps to do what?
Dropping the chin to the sternum. Have your heart over your head. It also compresses the glands, the thyroid, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Which helps to regulate the thyroid gland,
Yeah.
because in a lot of these communities, you have incidences of hypothyroidism because of their diet and because of stress. So, yeah, that's great. Simple poses work really well.
Yeah.
It does not have to be complicated. And also, I'm gonna ask you, you can call, I'm not sure what the protocol is, what Hector and Stephen have talked about, if we're calling it yoga. When I teach in certain, like I've been at one school now for 3 years, so when I walk in, they're like, the yoga lady's here, right? But in other places, I'm teaching mindful movement. Because certain communities have a relationship to yoga in which it's the work of the devil. You know, it's mindful movement. It's basically embodied movement, or, you know, which is like a double, you know, this thing.
Sure.
We're gonna go over some chair yoga poses. How's everybody on time? Does anybody have any questions right now?
Without naming and like technical terms like hip points and pushing the pubic bone in a certain direction.
Don't use pubic bone.
Okay.
Well, not with the adolescents.
Yeah.
Again, gauge where people are. Hip points is fine. Pubic, don't say pubic bone. What are you talking about?
Well, I was just looking at things because in a lot of times I'll have students push their pubic bone down towards the ground. So
Just don't even worry about that.
okay.
As long as they're not hurting themselves.
Right.
If you've been with particular people, let's say for 3 months, and then you really want to get into the minutia of a pose, that's great. But right now, you're offering a language. My guess is that
It's probably not gonna be that simple. People, it's gonna be more like, where do I put my hands? Where do my elbows go? Like,
Yeah.
it's gonna be very gross alignment, I would
Thank
say, more than like moving into the internal.
It's not,
function
yeah.
and bones and-
you may also have some language issues. I don't know, that's why I've asked Rachel to give me a better understanding of the populations in each shelter. I don't know if it's possible. Once I get the phone number, I can call them and find out. I also just had a conversation with a friend of mine because we're creating a program for refugees. But there is one of her clients who is a refugee from the Democratic Republic of Congo is being placed in a man's homeless shelter out in Jamaica. Most of the refugees that I know from the DRC have experienced extreme trauma. These were child soldiers forced to kill other family members. So do some research. Find out who it is that you're offering these skills to. Okay? Don't go in there like a privileged, yogi teacher. Come in there with wisdom and awareness and skillful means, right? So, chair yoga, what is it, Mary? Did you have a question?
No, let's do chair yoga, and then if it doesn't come up there, we can ask.
Okay, so sometimes you may have people that are not as physically able as other people, right? In which bending, and also the other thing, warrior one is a great pose to open. And it's just like open. And it makes people feel empowered. That's what you want. It's really beautiful to witness, just have them move through it. If they can't move through down dog chaturanga, blah, 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 right? You just have them straighten the leg, turn the foot in, parallel the feet, come to the other side. And that's in the sequence that I'm gonna give you guys. But, so if you have somebody that's not very physically able, or let's say you're not sure, right? You would have them perhaps use the chair, step 1 foot back. If they feel strong and stable, lift the arms up. Right, turn the heel up, step forward. Other side. And then another thing that you could do with the chair, okay, and again, making sure that nobody's butt is in anybody's face. This is down dog with a chair. Which feels amazing. You can also have people utilize another really great pose to do is tree pose. Because tree pose allows them, whether it's here in what we call shrub, bush, and then tree, is that they begin to understand that in order to balance, and I'll actually have them look at my foot, that in order to balance, we must shift. So that they can actually embody what that means. Also, when you're trying to balance on one foot, it's really hard to think about anything else. So they begin to learn how to embody focus. Tree pose is a great pose. And because they also learn that, you know, to whatever variation, into whatever's happening. And another thing that you can do is you can have them all hold hands, which is really beautiful to witness, and close eyes. Because they can understand that through community, we hold each other up. And because there's two sides, if they fall over, they can come back to this side. Yeah.
I mentioned that same thing because that's also a great karma to have people help each other do yoga. The karma of making the movement work. And I mentioned to Hector, he said that maybe some people don't want to touch each other. So I have a question. Yeah, how would you broach?
Well, you don't say you say, does anybody want to try this? And then you show it. And then if they want to try it, then they try it. And if they don't want to do it, they can just watch. Choice. Cool. You give them the option for everything. Everything. So tree pose can be done with the chair, right? Because if they have a hard time, so you know, my guess is there's going to be folding chairs. Folding chairs are a staple of most kind of sites, right? So you can move through your warrior poses. You can use down dog. You can do chair yoga, in which, let's say you have people that really, you know, older people, which this is going to be really beneficial for. You would have them kind of move forward a little bit, seated cat-cows, right? Little spinal twists, forward folds, same thing, ankle to knee. Notice the hands. You know, you can have them, so here's another thing, when you're doing shoulder openers, you can have them doing this, right? So vinyasa is not just moving through vinyasa as we typically call it, connecting through the breath is, you know, and then having them be aware of their alignment. So I don't have to be all like crazy with and be like, you know, tuck your coccyx. I'd just be like, right? Just be like, unarch your lower back. And then you can have them pull their hands away, pulling without letting go, and then come down. Across the other way. What I will ask you to do is to consider, because that's also a shoulder opener. Please do not have them do it behind their back. Why is this perhaps not a good thing to do?
Incarceration.
Right.
Oh.
Whether they've been detained and are refugees seeking asylum or they have been incarcerated. Please also try to remember that, at least it's my understanding, 1 in 4 women in the shelter system, if not more, have been victims of domestic violence. Or perhaps their children have seen the brother, husband, boyfriend, whatever, being taken away in handcuffs. Just don't do that. No. So,
What about like shoulder mobility, like this kind of thing?
I would wait until you understand kind of how they're moving.
This way.
That's, yeah, actually what Victoria just said. So when I'm doing, and you can do this in the chair too, is you can have them, you can actually have them moving through their bodies, you know. I also introduce some Qigong, have them vocalize a little bit, you know, so that they can also, it's like, oh, hi body, this is my body.
This would be good for phase one.
Yeah, but it can be overstimulating, so not
Yeah,
too
that's
much.
what I would say, that, hitting the body and shaking and stuff is very invigorating.
It's very invigorating, so you just do it a little bit.
Just a little bit.
And also you can, again, it's like, these are skill sets, tools. It's a toolbox. So you see what you have in front of you, who's in front of you, what they're experiencing, you know? And then you utilize the breath to kind of get everybody on the same wavelength, because that's what you are. You're utilizing the breath to get everybody on the same alpha wave. And what may happen is that you've done that, you've created this nice, everybody's cohesive, right, and chill, and then you might have, who knows what's gonna happen, somebody come in and completely disrupt everything. Really not uncommon for this to happen. And then, so how do you get everybody back? Have them understand that the thing that they always have is the breath. That's the first tool. That's the first gift. Right? And also try to understand that for a lot of people, especially people that have perhaps are survivors of sexual assault or victimization or being beaten or being mugged or anything like that, they may have a really complicated relationship to their own body. So how can we offer them to perhaps see that their body is their ally? Okay? To see that they can have refuge in their body. And the way to do that is by showing them how the body, to embody actually having care and comfort and ease in the body. So be really careful with hip openers. Please don't do pigeon at first until you have a better understanding. Okay? Also, pigeon can mess up knees. Like pigeon is just put pigeon aside. So ankle to knee, this is great. With the younger kids, you can have them do standing. I do this a lot with them, especially like if their pants are too tight and they can't do tree pose, right? This is another variation. You can have them be here, and then you can look around at them and be like, well, so what if maybe we went like this?
What about the seated version?
I would do that with your.
Too vulnerable?
Again, it depends, but I wouldn't do that. The variation for that would be simply being here. Right. So what I'm going to ask you guys to do is to see how really every single pose, whether being upside down or on a chair, is the same pose, right? And how you can utilize gravity or objects to help you, right? Perhaps maybe some kids can come to ankle to knee, or grown-ups, okay? Using the breath, and then take them out of it. And then, you know, a nice transition, especially a playful transition from ankle to knee. And here's where you can adjust once you've gotten the okay by pressing against the hips.
Okay.
Gently. And then a nice transition is simply to, and then come down, other side. Because what you're doing is compressing and opening, compressing and opening. Without getting too crazy. Like, this is not about being like, hey, look at me in my fancy yoga pose. This thing is going to be one of your best friends if you have access to it. Utilizing the chair. So if you have students, let's say it has the two legs like this. If you have students or clients that have long shins like I do, you would have them come so that their shins are totally supported on the long length of the chair. Oh, now I'm in my happy place. Or you can have them put their feet in through here. But ideally, the more support, the better, right? So let me ask you guys a question. Why is this one of the most profound and useful poses?
Training the limbs.
Start at the basics.
Oh,
So legs over the
is this,
feet over heart.
Lower back.
Who said that?
I did. Feet over heart.
Feet over heart. Okay, I've had conversations with the faculty members at the Harvard program. And I've said to them, you know, I used to be an EMT. These guys are medical doctors. We all know the first thing that you do when somebody goes into shock, physical shock, in which, let's say, from extreme blood loss, right? First thing they do is put the legs up. If anybody's experienced, either is experiencing psychological trauma or has experienced psychological trauma, this is like first aid for the soul. It lowers the heart rate. It drops the blood pressure. Everything begins to chill out. This pose engages the parasympathetic nervous system. It's the one that begins to tell the brain everything's okay. It's okay. Okay? And then you can have them begin to just maybe one hand on their heart, one hand on their belly. You know, and those, you know, like hand heart, and you'll watch them and just have them actually feeling how they, and tucking the chin. So why is this different from this?
spine aligned.
Spine is aligned, which also then does what?
Central channel is more open.
Yeah, I'm not talking about that though. This, okay, so here, okay, let's do it. Everybody calm down and do it.
Well, I would just say anxiety, it's like you're.
Thank
breathing on
you.
them.
This is a different state of mind. This begins to open up. So look around at all of your people and say, perhaps you could consider dropping your chin down. It quiets the mind.
We're softly.
It's a forward fold, right? Then you'd have them just feel their hand on their heart and hand on their belly and just to feel themselves breathe. And then you could perhaps lead them through what I call relaxation meditation, in which I move them through the body. When you, oh, and if you have kids, you can have them put something on their belly to feel it rise and fall. When you ask your students to bring their attention to the right side and then the left side and the right side and the left side and the right side and left side, you're creating cohesion between the two sides of the brain. You're actually having the two sides talk to each other and begin to rewire, because what happens with trauma is the brain actually begins to change shape. When you haven't come out of this, right, you can have them just bring their knees in, right? And what I do as part of my practice, and you guys have seen me do this with you and my students, is have them call to mind a most recent moment of kindness that they have for themselves or another creature or themselves or somebody else. Because most of the time, it's my experience that they've just been told they're a piece of shit and everything they do is wrong. Begin to have them consider celebrating themselves and their hearts.
Do you find that for when you're teaching in a setting that we're going to be teaching in for DHS, that people use the mindful movement yoga classes as a kind of refuge space, becomes like church feeling, like inside, or are they using it to strengthen or get different? Both. Because I was thinking about, oh, everybody loves to do abdominal. Like,
You're gonna have, I've had people come up to me and say, like, I wanna get stronger, I wanna be more healthy, I wanna, you know, you can keep that, it does kind of become like church in a way, because it is, I mean, we're connecting to ourselves, and that's pretty profound spirituality. But everybody's gonna have a different relationship to it. You know, I still have staff members from years ago get in touch with me. And say, hey, I was thinking about this, and what do you think? And, you know, and again, just be mindful that, you know, if people have been raised in strict Christian communities, the idea of yoga may not fly. Like when I'm in Uganda, I have to be really careful. Really careful. It's also could be quite dangerous. So, culturally aware of any kind of gender